Waiting for it. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do a beautiful manifestation of gratitude to get this class started. What I want you to do is get as comfortable as you can where you're sitting, plant your feet on the ground, relax into your chair, and take a few deep cleansing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathe into the moment of deeply profound contentment and deep connection to the wonder of the universe. Allow the sacred fire of the season to glow within our souls. Fill our heart chakras with the bounty of the deepest expression of gratitude so that it may light up our world and bring joy to those around us. Be the beacons of love, joy, satisfaction, and appreciation which we truly are meant to be. Allow the serenity, laughter, and euphoria of expressing gratitude to lighten the burdens of our emotional shadows. Great spirits and goddesses of gratitude be with us in this sacred circle as we prepare for the season of giving thanks. It is with peace, unity, and empathy that we join together today in celebration of that which makes us goddess gals, that we are meant to be. It is with gratitude that I welcome you here today. Take a few deep breaths, and when you are ready, you may open your eyes and join me in this sacred circle. Welcome. Okay, so I will go ahead and just attune you once more to the share screen so we can briefly go over that one more time with the goddesses to manifest and honor for Thanksgiving. Squanit, the Wampanoag healer. Demeter, the goddess of the harvest and motherhood. Persephone, grain goddess and queen of Hades, as well as Hestia, goddess of the hearth and sacred fire. Okay. So at this point, we will be going over all of that. I'll stop sharing my share screen for the moment, just to change the view up a little bit. And I'll go ahead and start with Squanit. This is a very interesting legend and goddess. She is important to the Wampanoag, Mohegan, and Pequot Indians, the Native American tribes up in the northeastern region. And her power is very dualistic. Like a lot of goddesses, she has her light side and her shadow side. And her marriage with her husband was tempestuous at best. And in Algonquin legends, again from Massachusetts, she's the wife of the giant god Moshup, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he is the one who, when lying down, kicked off his moccasins and created the islands off of Massachusetts, including Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, where I grew up. Interesting anecdote, I'm originally from Plymouth. In my infancy and toddlerhood, we were there. And then beyond that, moved to other places, and I ended up growing up from the age of 6 on till I was 13 on the beautiful island of Nantucket. So for me, the lore of the area is very important, and it's something I grew up with. And the story of the settlers, of the pilgrims coming, the Puritans coming that first cold, bleak winter, and they were unprepared for what lay ahead. It was through the Wampanoag tribe that they were able to actually survive. And if they hadn't taken the stores that were buried in mounds, the stored produce that was left in these wonderful earthen mounds, they found them and took them to survive. Without that, they would not have been able to make it through the winter. So the true meaning of Thanksgiving comes from that. When they made it through that first season and came through to celebrate their full year there, it was truly to give back and give thanks to the Wampanoags for their support, for their guidance, their peaceful connection together at that point, and the ability they had to share together, and that they learned, the Puritans learned how to cultivate and use proper agriculture for that region. It wasn't something they were accustomed to, because of course they'd been in England and then they went to Holland and then they came across. So it was a very difficult time through that first main season while they were getting their foothold on the New World. So that's why today I specifically wanted to talk about this kind of story coming from the region. When we're thinking of expressing gratitude and thinking of the Thanksgiving season. So Squannet and her story is very unique, very interesting story. There are her goddess energy is one of, as I say, the duality. So she's a very fierce, angry goddess because her husband was cruel, and the connectivity, if you've been studying with me, among world traditions, you'll see there's sort of a kind of an ancient knowing or archetypal significance of connectivity. So in the sort of the vein of the Titan god Kronos, who was the father of the Olympian gods, Moshe threw his children into the ocean. Pretty harsh. And they became like rocks and islets and things like that off the coast, right? And then in his rage at his own wife, at Squannet, for being outraged at him about him, he threw her into the ocean. She became a very prominent, famous rock out in that sea. However, that's not the end to her story. She is much more than that. She has corporeal form and is believed to have been seen physically in many different situations. She is one of, you would say, a goddess who suffered some traumas in her existence and in her development of her story, but it doesn't seem to have stopped her powers, and it didn't prevent her from doing incredible things. Apparently, she was very beautiful, and out of jealousy, other deities who found her, they tortured her. They cut her eyes into square shapes, and so she would often be found with her hair over her face to hide her wounds, right? So that's one aspect of the story of Squannet. The other one is, and she's called different things, that she's called Squannet, Granny Squannet, Granny Squant, and Old Squant. So there are lots of variations of her throughout the legends and the culture as her story grew, that if you wanted to curry favor with her as a healer, now that's the powerful thing, she would come through and work with and help shamans with their healing work. And she's very powerful. If you wanted to curry favor with her, you would bring these hand-woven, beautiful baskets down to the water, because she was typically thought of having come from the ocean, right? With her rock form coming into corporeal form on land is what I would presume. They would go to the ocean, seashore, or wherever they thought she would be, next to a tree in the forest, because she's also associated with forests. So in either manifestation, depending on where people were, they would bring her this beautiful hand-woven basket with offerings to her, food items, things that were great, but you didn't want her to look her in the eye. It was always done with reverence, right? So you would back away and wouldn't look, and you would then have her favor and protection and healing in your life. So it's a very interesting goddess. And she's also considered, because her husband is a giant, right? The giant god that created the lands around the Cape and the coast. she's considered also to be a little person. And there were truly little people, right? They were like a smaller kind of pixie-like, you might say, imp kind of character. And she would be considered kind of like one of those as well. So you wanted to curry favor with her and be careful and be respectful. You would find her sometimes in the woods. People say that, you know, on the beach at one point, there's a telling of school children in 1928, and they were walking along the beach in Mashpee, and they saw what they thought was an oxen cart full of hay. But then the hay started to move and change form, and they thought it was Squannet. They believed it was Squannet. So that was kind of like an amazing thing, right? So they would, you know, be sure to like bring her offerings and all of that, because she was kind of like a sorceress. She could do good or ill, like most goddesses. She has the shadow and the light. So it's an interesting story. Interesting how the feeling of the stories too are so different and so like specific to the areas and the regions in which they are worshipped. We think of that stormy, she was considered to bring or calm storms. And growing up in Massachusetts on the coast, every year there are nor'easters. On Nantucket, every season there was a huge nor'easter, a storm, and it changes the shape of the island. I mean, it erodes away some of it and moves the sand around the other way. It causes a lot of issues. So Squannet would have been associated with those kinds of storms, and then the calm afterwards, and you wanted to be protected by her. So that's why I wanted today to focus on some of those New England stories as we're approaching Thanksgiving. And we are also going to discuss briefly, and as I said, this is review for you, Monica, because you've already learned about these other goddesses. Goddesses to work with, to manifest during this season. There are some really powerful ones associated in ancient Greek mythology specifically, which is what we're going to now, with the time of the season and the creation of the changing of the seasons and the need to harvest and store one's abundance for the lean months of winter until spring would come again. That story has to do with Demeter and her daughter Persephone. And Demeter is the goddess of the grain and harvest and cultivation and poppies and amazing things. Her daughter is also the grain goddess specifically, with beautiful wheat. I see her as literally having wheat gold hair and being the maiden when she's in the upper world, and very lithe and singing and dancing with her nymphs until she's in the underworld. Her husband abducted her, took her there, even though her father Zeus gave her hand in marriage. Her mother didn't know and wouldn't have agreed, so they did it that way. And Persephone didn't know. Unbeknownst to her, she was taken and brought to the underworld, not unlovingly, I will add. Hades loved her passionately, deeply, but she, being a creature of the upper world, of sunlight, of growth and light, had a lot of trouble with that. And though while in the underworld, she started developing her more sorceress-like skills and, you know, tending to the spirits and bringing rejuvenation to the Elysian fields. And if you think of it, tending to the root structure underground, you can think of it that way, as things were dormant during the winter. So through that story, these two goddesses have a very, very powerful time. Meanwhile, every season in the upper world, while Persephone is down in Hades, Demeter goes into repose. She grieves the loss of her daughter. Now, the first time it happened, she caused famine and strife because she had no idea what happened to her beloved daughter. And they weren't just mother and daughter. They were a symbiotic, powerful relationship. They worked together in tandem to do these beautiful things for mortals and for the cultivation of the planet. So while Persephone is ruling as queen in the underworld, Demeter is in repose. She's going into more of a crone-like state to grieve and go inward. She doesn't allow things to grow. It's the time when things are barren. But after the first time this happened, the Eleusinian mysteries became a thing because of this story. And Ulysses and the princes there, she taught how to become agrarian in their practices. So they've learned how to cultivate, store grains, thus preparing themselves for the winter. So this story in the ancient Greeks tells the whole cycle of the seasons and truly is powerful for mortal kind. So you can imagine what that would have been like, worshiping and practicing the ancient mysteries associated with both Demeter and Persephone. It was incredibly powerful work, very sacred, very deep work. And one aspect with the agrarian, and then there's the other one that was only practiced by women, that were women's mysteries. So it's very powerful stuff. And then when we look at Hestia, it's a totally different feeling. The goddess is an inward goddess. She's quiet. She kept to herself. She was the firstborn Titan sibling. So in that case, she's the oldest. But then when Kronos swallowed all of the siblings, she was the first to be swallowed, right? And when Zeus was able to heroically release them, being the one that was, Rhea gave Kronos a rock wrapped in swaddling clothes, and it would let Zeus go off and be taken to be raised elsewhere, so he would be kept safe. And he came back, and of course, as Kronos feared, did overthrow his father and help release his siblings. So Demeter was there. Hestia, was the first swallowed, but she was also the last to be regurgitated, in which case she is kind of dualistic in the sense that she is the first and the youngest. And that's a very unique component. So you can look at her in different ways, because she's the first literally to physically be born in the world, but then rebirth and coming out, she was the last one to come out. So the longest gestating, the last one fully released. And it definitely influenced her personality. There's no question. She decided never to marry. She wanted sacred practices only for herself, to withdraw. She didn't want to be featured prominently, although she is one of the 12 Olympians. She wanted to kind of pull back and not be as prominent. So what Zeus did to honor her and her status in the family, being the eldest, technically, literally being the eldest, he offered her the personification, the representation, and the worship that was most sacred, which is that of the sacred fire, the sacred hearth. And every township and every kingdom and home, the circle of the hearth is sacrosanct. It is very important. There are rituals to maintain that fire. If anybody moves, they would take some of the fire with them to the next house. When a daughter got married, the mother would bring fire to their new home to start the lighting of the sacred fire in a new space. If it went out, there were rituals that had to be performed in order to renew it properly, with the sacred offerings, pigs being one of them, and libations of wine. So she was offered the first toast and the first choicest pieces of meat in the celebration of any feast. So Hestia, although subtle in her representation, not so very powerfully portrayed, I would say, throughout her mythos, is also incredibly powerful because of the significance she had for mortals and the sacredness of the work. Her temple was, very, very well cared for. Her in Rome, she's actually, in Roman tradition, she's called Vesta. And I know most of us have heard of Vesta and the Vestal virgins, right? The virgins that tend to her temple and keep the sacred fires going. So it's an interesting concept thinking about her. She's very inward. Her work is inner work. And when I talk about that archetypally speaking, it's truly the work you go within to work with inside yourself to find that sacred space. You don't need gratification externally. You are secure within yourself, balanced, in harmony, and the true calling that you personally have, following your true path, will give you deep satisfaction. Now, in a modern setting, of course, that doesn't mean you're not going to have kids or be in a romance or to be in marriage. It's talking about your personality more than that, although some women may not. And that Hestia may be their prominent archetype in the very literal sense. So Hestia is very important this time of year, specifically as some of us have hearths and are able to light them. And even if you are in a location where the climate doesn't allow for it, or you don't physically have a hearth, you can create things. You can create a circle within your sacred space, using, for example, crystals in a circle, and you could put a candle in the center and have that be your sacred fire in your home. Is a beautiful touch. You do not have to keep it running all the time for safety's sake, but when you want to ritualistically invoke Hestia, that's a great way to do it. And it's very powerful this time of year. So while you are celebrating Thanksgiving, think of these goddesses, think of the power they have for you, archetypally speaking, with the powerful healing goddess that can either bring tempest or healing, depending on the mood. Decide which version of that you're presenting to yourself. Are you going to be true to your core values within yourself, that which makes you feel connected to your higher source, your higher connection to self-empowerment, meaning things like being kind to others, being generous, being true to your true nature, remembering to step back when you're overly stimulated emotionally, and staying within the spectrum of being good and as close to your source, like where you began. So then we look at the mother archetype. How can you mother yourself and nurture others? Supporting the Persephone, that would be the Demeter. Then Persephone coming in, supporting that inner child, the vision that you had in your youth, in your childhood and youth, bringing that up for yourself, looking at it and seeing where maybe you got off track, what maybe you can work with to bring that back to yourself and use it again. And remember that transforming through that brought you power, becoming mature out of the youthful energy, the inner child, maidenhood into womanhood, brings out real deep power. And if you can recognize that again, bring it back to yourself and feel the regeneration of that at this time, this is very powerful, right? Especially right now, this time of year when these myths are so important to look at. And then with the Hestia work going inward and being deeply rooted and seated in the sacred space of expressing gratitude, which is what we're working with today. So it's a lot of powerful stuff to look at, archetypally speaking. It's a lot. And if you would like me to send you any of the pre-recorded videos of the other classes, for those of you who may have missed them and are watching this after the fact, you can feel free to contact me directly to ask me, and I will send them to you so you can see those classes. And so for right now, what I would like to do, I'm going to go ahead, as we move on to some of the other important aspects of expressing gratitude, I would like to use a beautiful deck, which I recently got, of Daily Crystals by Heather Askinois. I'm believing I'm saying that right. Heather Askinois. Or Askinois. I'm not, Askinos. I think it is. I'm not sure. Unique spelling of the last name. I just want to give her proper credit because I'm using her deck, and this will be shared publicly. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a crystal card to use while we are looking at expressing and working with gratitude, and something that will inspire us as we approach the feelings that brings up for us, and to use as a support, because crystals are powerful and they have beautiful meanings. I'm going to go ahead and choose one for this class, and we'll see what comes up. Oh, so lovely. And one of the ones I use a lot in my jewelry, especially with beading, I'll show you in just a moment. This is aventurine, and this is specifically green aventurine. And this one is about creating your own luck. This is a beautiful one. It's great for your heart chakra as well. It's very calming. It brings about some abundance. And let me go ahead and read a little bit about what aventurine is all about. That's a lovely, lovely crystal. It's very soothing. Okay, so this is about creating your own luck. Do you believe you are lucky? What area of your life could use an infusion of luck? How can you stay open to opportunities? And the action is to affirm that I am a magnet of and for good fortune. At the end of the day, identify one lucky thing that happened to you. So that's beautiful. I'm also wearing a stone that's associated with luck as well as citrine, and I make jewelry using both of these powerful crystals. So if it's something any of you are interested in, let me know. I do that as well. So aventuring and thinking about that, as far as looking at expressing gratitude, being open to receiving the abundance and bounty of luck and beautiful experiences and that heart chakra energy, while working with the true expression of gratitude, is something beautiful, because when you open yourself up to gratitude, good things follow, and wonderful experiences, and all that beautiful green, lovely heart energy can definitely make a difference. So I love that. That was perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and share screen again so we can get a little bit more here. Okay. So I'm going to go over all of this, and you're welcome to either take a photograph of the screen or take notes. I really highly recommend you do this, as this is a wonderful way to work with manifesting gratitude. Something so powerful to work with. Some of the ways to do this, and there are more, these are just ways I created for you because I think they feel appropriate. Being present in the moment. Recognizing and appreciating little joys as well as big accomplishments. Acknowledging other people and expressing gratitude to them for all the good they bring into your life. Recognizing that expressing gratitude is a gift to yourself and others. Understanding that being grateful is an act of love for self and others. Realizing that vulnerability and gratitude are a part of a cycle of self-empowerment. Keeping a gratitude journal. And then it's always nice to choose a gratitude accountability buddy to work with on these ideas. Sometimes we forget or we get bogged down in what expressing gratitude looks like and feels like. So having a buddy that keeps you in that space of being authentic about expressing gratitude is very helpful. I would also say then there are some more wonderful concepts, and if you're ready for that, I will move forward to the next page, which is about literal physical things you can have in your space or use to work with to help you stimulate and bring gratitude home. And you're going to notice something very serendipitous and beautiful, and one of the reasons I was excited to get green aventurine, because for the crystals to work with to express gratitude, we have citrine, rose quartz, and green aventurine, which is just what I drew from the deck, and that was completely just me tuning into the cards. So it was absolutely right on point and meant to be. So the oils that you can work with are ylang ylang, geranium, lavender, and wild orange. They all bring about a very beautiful, positive space. Some are soothing, some are calming, uplifting. Wild orange is very invigorating and joyful. So all of these will open you up to experiencing the beauty of gratitude. And with symbolism, things that you can keep around you or look for kind of as signs or symbols that you may ask the universe to show you these things to remind you to be grateful, will be spirals, pink roses, hummingbirds, dolphins. The Maori fish hook is a very powerful symbol and is used as a way of expressing several things, including gratitude. Thoughtful gifts, and I mean thoughtful gifts as in the kind of gift that when you see it, you know is perfect for the person you want to give it to, because it represents something that you know about them that they would love and appreciate. It's not a gift that you would like. It's the perfect gift to give someone else. And that's a lovely way to express gratitude, especially if somebody has done something wonderful for you. Then we also have the symbol of the tree of life, which is, again, a gorgeous and beautiful symbol, which can be found very frequently. And the cornucopia, which is the quintessential Thanksgiving symbol and sign of gratitude. You could also say the Native American corn mix with the red corn and the mixtures of different colors, a little bundling of those is also a beautiful symbol of gratitude, as well as it also refers to and ties in with the cornucopia and all to represent Thanksgiving. So those are all wonderful things you can work with and have or find. And I'm going to go back again to show you the next page. The next page is really juicy. This is where we get into the deep stuff. And I want you to really take some time to think about these things after class to work with. These are some major and important journaling prompts. And journaling is an incredible way to get out the things that are holding you back. So I recommend sometimes doing some just free writing, free flow, don't think it out, stream of consciousness journaling. It gets out the gunk, the things that are clogging the gears of your works towards being open and in the moment and happy. We want to be in that joyfully present moment. So journaling is a great way to do that. But there are also very wonderful ways to journal with prompts. So if you're thinking about gratitude, here are some great prompts I wrote for you to use. You can photograph that again, write as many down as you feel you need to. So with these journaling prompts I went with, how does expressing gratitude make me feel? What are 3 ways in which I can be more grateful today? Expressing gratitude is a loving act. When I express this love, it comes back to me in these ways. Giving without the expectation of anything in return causes me to feel. How does gratitude alleviate my stress and negative thought processes? Okay, did you manage to get all of those? I'm actually going to go to share screen one more time, Monica, so you have a little extra time with that if you want to photograph that image as well, just in case. Those are important. So there's a lot to work with there. And we still have plenty of time to have the open forum and discuss all of this that we're working with today and whatever comes up for you. And to think about how to really get into that space and work with the expression of gratitude in a way that's like fulfilling and happy and makes you feel good. So, okay, did you have all that down? Did you get everything you needed from that? Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. All right, go ahead and unmute and we can have some discussions about this. This is a juicy subject. This is a big topic. Is there anything off the bat that you feel you would like to share that you have observed while thinking about gratitude today?
Well, I love the last prompt about thinking of how gratitude can help to alleviate stress, because I think that a lot of us deal with that, especially, you know, we're during this period of time where we're supposed to be celebrating family and togetherness and Thanksgiving, but that also brings with it an enormous amount of stress. And so I think, you know, focusing in on gratitude and thinking about how being grateful can help you alleviate stress and really focus on the positive rather than, conflicts that sometimes happen within families, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Monica. And it's interesting you should mention that about getting together with families, because that's where this archetypal work can really help. As we discussed several different archetypes today, right? The shamanistic healer, who can be dualistic. So deciding how you want to work with that. Then we have the mother archetype, the daughter archetype and queen of the underworld. So it's kind of a dualistic thing. It's the maiden becoming, coming into her true power, right? And their deeper power. And then we also have Hestia, the inner peace, the inward sovereign of her own space and destiny, right? So within the context of all of the things that come up with family gatherings, and it is wonderful when that works out, but we can get reactivated. Our inner children sometimes come out to play, and sometimes it's not comfortable because we're reacting from an old listening.
Yeah.
Like your sibling might say something to you that totally reactivates things that, you know, you went through when you were kids growing up, and not such a sophisticated time of your life when you're not emotionally, you know, savvy and able to process things. So when you step back and choose the alchemical work of emotional alchemy, which is what I like to call that, right? You can transform those and choose the voice you want to use to respond with. And I know that's not easy sometimes, especially in major family gatherings. So this would be an interesting time to put that into practice and see. You know, I'm still in the mode of the pandemic, so getting together with a lot of people isn't happening for me for that, specifically for Thanksgiving. But still, there is the space of expressing that gratitude, and from a distance. Like from my perspective, being an artist, I'm actually a paper crafter as well. I was certified in that to teach it. So like I make cards, and I just got through sending beautiful, like handcrafted cards expressing my love for family members and gratitude for them in my lives. That is a gift you can give to others. It doesn't have to be something major, but something that they really is personal and like talks directly to them. So things like that, like any little thing you can do to kind of be the balm or the salve to make, you know, the family connection lovely is certainly helpful as we approach the holidays. Yes. And for stress factors too, I happen to work with a lot of that in my own life. Being fully transparent about that, I do have a lot of emotional responses. I'm very open and aware of things, right? So I pull a lot of things from experiences, and also have responses that come up that are, you know, more along stress and anxiety that then can fuel into, you know, fiery responses, sometimes trigger anger responses about things that are specific button pushers, you know, specific triggers. They don't even have to be external. For sometimes it's the stuff, I mean, not from other people, meaning not interpersonally. For me, it's sometimes just little things. And when those little things start to accumulate and start to become bigger things only because they're compounded, that's what the struggle then becomes. Not being able to step back in the moment and just being like, okay, those things are now becoming big because I'm not processing them well. I'm too tired. I'm, you know, in mommy mode. I have businesses to run, work to do, stressed about the pandemic, you name it. Have too much to cook for dinner, not enough time. Whatever it is that brings up the stress then just becomes insurmountable. And it takes just those little moments of going, okay, I'm going to step back and I need my journal now, and going and taking a few moments to sit and write. So one of the ways isn't just to, like, yes, as I said, stream of consciousness writing, get it all out, all the angst, anything you want to put out. It's like, you know, a baggage dump of all the junk you need to say. But then the true work there is to use it to guide yourself back, boom, right onto the target path you want to be on. And you can do it with journaling. You could do it with, if there's a particular mantra you say to yourself. If there's a song that brings you back to center, go get your crystals, burn a little sage, you know, wear some essential oils. That's why I give you this list of all these wonderful things you can use, because I know it's not always easy to catch ourselves from going there. So anyway, those are some ideas behind the whole, like, how to work with your emotions and deal with those things that come up, because we do a lot of things, and when we're not feeling like balanced in it, that's when the shadow sides start coming out. That's when we start expressing negative goddess energy, the vindictive, the vengeful, the, you know, jealous and plotting. That's why working with the archetypes is so great, because it's so real. It's so honest. We're not always, you know, sunshine and moonbeams here. We'd love to be, but it's not always the case. So anything else that comes up that you want to work with today? Is there something you think you might work with this week specifically, Monica, that you think you could put into your schedule while you're doing all of this week?
I don't know. I'm just thinking in terms of really taking the time to consider all of the things. I love the idea of taking time to consider what lucky things have happened in the day, or because a lot of times, I mean, for me, it's a short week where there's a lot of, it's coming towards the end of the semester, so there's a lot of stuff. So I spend my Thanksgiving weekend grading projects.
Oh, right, of course.
But there's just like a lot of stuff crammed into a few days. And so sometimes it can be overwhelming. And so just like taking the time to think, okay, what's going right? And being open to more positive energy rather than the stress of having to get so much stuff done. So I like that.
Yes.
I have a couple of Maori fish hooks actually from when I was in New Zealand when I lived there.
Perfect. That's wonderful.
So I was like, wow, that's cool.
That's very cool.
I'll be wearing it.
Next excellent. Week. Excellent. It's a little reminder because they're very powerful. They're about manifesting power as well. So that's good. You'll have the power.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I was doing a lecture on the Polynesian Triangle and settling the Pacific and things like that. And I totally forgot to bring it in. And I was telling my class, I've got this fish hook. And I forgot to bring it in. So I guess I'll share it with them tomorrow.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good idea. So another thing I wanted to point out from the specific things you're talking about, which is great. And of course, that's a reminder to me. Okay, so there are so many things that you can transform the stressors into a positive, and using gratitude specifically. We want to be using the sentence structure of I am grateful for, or I am thankful for. And here's the great thing you can do. Things that are stressing you because they feel overwhelming, flip that around and look at why you can be grateful for what it is, right? So I am grateful to have these papers to grade because this career satisfies me in this such and such a way. Or I am grateful I have so many things to do right now to prepare for this holiday because I have family coming, or you know what I mean? Like it's the catch yourself in the moment kind of thing, and just transform it. Transform whatever is like bothering you to see if you can. Now, sometimes that's impossible. Yeah, there are things you just can't transform into a better thing.
I try to do that at tax time. I try to say, well, I'm grateful that I'm paying taxes because it means that I'm, making a living, right?
Absolutely right. And
I'm, paying it forward.
You're saying it. I am so grateful for this.
Yeah. I also appreciate that you brought in Squanit, because I think that it's really important for us at this time of year as Americans to really remember the Wampanoag people and also connect to whether you're here or in Canada. Their Thanksgiving was a month ago, but First Nations people, the Indigenous people, and just consider that, like, when I remember there's one, he passed away a few years ago, but there's one Wampanoag historian who he said, we're always, the first Thanksgiving was not the first Thanksgiving, that the Wampanoag people always had Thanksgiving, they gave thanks every year as part of their tradition. And so I love that, to kind of connect to older traditions and just acknowledge that it wasn't all, it it wasn't necessarily the traditional first Thanksgiving story that we were taught when we were growing up, right?
No, absolutely not. The first Thanksgiving was nothing like what we consider now or what we think of it in our minds iconically. It was very simple. It was what they had that they'd harvested. It was what they'd hunted. They offered up. It wasn't the pies and all the things and the big spread and all of these. I mean, it was a level of bounty, but a modest bounty, and it was enough to realistically be able to share. So I know sometimes we think of that, but of course, all of these sorts of practices go back to ancient cultures as well. Mm-hmm. That's why we have these celebrations. So it was a wonderful thing. And I think it's very, very important to acknowledge why we celebrate the real Thanksgiving and what it was really about. And I think sometimes people don't recognize it from that perspective. As I said, I grew up in that area and learning about Massasoit and all of the incredible things from that region. And I have been to, of course, the village of the Plymouth Plantation multiple times. And for me as a girl, watching that and going there and seeing the live demonstrations of arrowhead making and of the burning of the logs to make canoes, and having like the shamanistic medicine woman tribal person there very frankly talking about things. There was no sugarcoating it. There was no like smile and pose and it was realistic stuff. And that really affected me growing up. And I think it was great to witness that. So I have an incredibly deep appreciation for Native culture. And I feel like it's so important to acknowledge and heal the harm that was done to any degree we can by recognizing and honoring what we are able to now. Yeah. I work with a lot of arrowheads in my jewelry. Actually, I love it. I've always loved that. My dad taught me how to look for them because growing up, and he's actually from Connecticut, and sometimes he would walk in the woods after a rain and would find arrowheads in the woods growing up. He had a deep connection to that energy as well. And my mother also from Massachusetts. I was raised to acknowledge these things. And of course, having been homeschooled almost completely, it led to a lot of deep projects and deep looking into these sort of historical things from that perspective. So it brings up a really good appreciation and awareness of it. And now that my husband is originally from Mexico, so like I've learned about a lot of native Mexicano tradition as well. It's a lot of beautiful, like I'm wearing huichol. This is from Mexico City. I love it. The beaded handy arts and all of these things, weavings, I love. So there's a lot to the season and a lot to Thanksgiving. And so I was why I really wanted to work with gratitude today, because I was like, this is the time. We need to do that. Well, again, Monica, thank you so much for being here with me. You're my gold star student. You're always here.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Star for you. Thank you.
To be learning a little bit more and also just connecting to some of the goddess energy.
Yes, and no, it's very interesting. No matter what your background might be or your spiritualist points of view are, it's still interesting work to do. And I say that because some people are hesitant to approach goddess work. And it's just working with those themes throughout history, and it's really amazing to look at them within and think how we are informed by all of those ancient stories as part of our our ancient knowing or awareness, like reptilian brain thing, right? But it's like we have a connectivity to all of it. We're connected to all of that just from being here on this planet. So again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving and beautiful gratitude all throughout the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you next time, I hope.
All right. Bye.
Bye.